evening, everybody. Thank you very much for being here today. Apologies for the slight delay. Welcome to this fantastic venue. We're here at BDP. You're in the building. We're excited to be here. We're here for a live streaming event. So first of all, thank you to all the people joining us on this live stream of various BDP events all over the country and across the globe. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. And we're here ahead of Black History Month. And we're going to have a discussion very shortly about working in this particular field. I'm particularly interested in being here today because I'm not from this area. I'm going to deliver a keynote speech very shortly about my area, my field, and how we've learned lessons and are still learning lessons about how we address the issue of discrimination and lack of diversity. You guys had David Osoga last year, so there's zero pressure on me to deliver anything on his level, but let's give it a go and let's give it a good try. My name is Jordan Jarrett Bryan. I'm really glad to be here speaking to all of you guys here today. Thank you for the invite. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, what I do, and how I think that you guys in your industry can hopefully improve and learn from some of the things that my industry, as I mentioned, has done, and a little bit about where I'm from. I want you all to think about BDP and the architecture and construction industry throughout my speech for the next 15 minutes or so. First, I want to tell you that I'm amazing. I'm actually amazing. I'm talking about, I'm great. I'm not talking about the kind of great self-affirmation great or the I think I'm great. I'm actually great. I'm really, really great. Let me tell you why. Here's part of why I'm great. The job that I do and the impact that I've had in my industry, broadcast media, the impact I've had on people in my industry is part of the reason why I'm great. My industry is a fantastic industry to work in. I'm a journalist and sports broadcaster. I work for Channel 4 News as their sports correspondent, and TalkSport, I do shows there as well. I also work for a number of outlets, media from here in the UK and abroad as well. I've been a writer since I was 14 years old, and I've been in the broadcast game for the last 13 years. I've been blessed. I've covered the last 3 Paralympic Games in London, Rio, and Tokyo, and hoping to go to Paris in a couple of years' time for my 4th. I've covered football World Cups, rugby World Cups, cricket World Cups, heavyweight boxing fights, F1 Grand Prix, Wimbledon, golf, a lot. I've done a lot. I've traveled the world and met some of the most successful athletes in the world. I'm truly, truly blessed. I've had to work very hard to where I've got to. There's a long way to go still, but I've worked hard as I should have. And I'm here. My industry is dope. I've done some phenomenal things and met some amazing people. However, my industry, the media industry, has a problem, has a very, very big problem. It still doesn't know how to deal with racism and other forms of discrimination. Like in other areas of my life, my industry thinks that gestures, initiatives, and tokenism will address many of those problems. My industry thinks that Black History Month, just as an example, will address the issue of racism, of its racism and exclusion of black people. My industry thinks that black squares will get more black people jobs. My industry thinks that promoting footballers taking the knee will stop racist people from tweeting, "Go back home to your country." My industry also thinks that mentioning that we have the most diverse governments will improve the lives, the living lives and working lives of many black people and make them feel more comfortable here in the UK. Because for a long time, my industry wasn't prepared to do the work to ensure it was doing itself justice. The job of media is to show and broadcast stories to the world, doesn't matter what form, comedy, news, drama, can be written, whatever, educate, entertain, or inform the public. But how can we do that with integrity, credibility, and authenticity if most of the people doing the media are making those decisions about what the media shows are of one race, normally one gender, normally one age group, and often educated in the same way? And then it took a black man to be murdered and seen by the world for much of the world to think to themselves, hang on a minute, that was wrong. Not everyone thought that, but many did. I'll speak to the reaction of my industry. That's only fair. I can't talk for other industries. I'll speak to my industry. You're going to hear that word a lot, by the way. And the reaction that came after George Floyd was murdered. I remember in our newsroom at Channel 4 News, I heard lots of shock and disgust and confusion by many of my colleagues. WTF, how can this happen? It's so sad. That's what I most commonly heard. But let me tell you now, none of my black colleagues, both at Channel 4, TalkSport, or Black Academic, were surprised. We wasn't shocked. We were past disgust. We were far from confused. This was almost a norm. Hearing about black people being murdered by police with impunity was something that we all just came accustomed to on a global scale. The only difference is this one happened to be caught on camera and rammed down the world's throats because you all had nowhere to go. Remember lockdown. Fast forward to my industry today, and don't get me wrong, the industry is still in bits and has a long, long way to go, trust me. Media still hasn't addressed its lack of diverse leadership. Most large established organizations are still run and owned by white people. But we see more black people fronting shows, and we see more programming that speaks to people that look like me. Small crumbs, but we move. Why has that happened? It happened because unlike in the construction industry, media is by definition an outwardly facing profession that is meant to garner the attention of the public. So black people that didn't like how the industry treated many of us internally rose up, and how we were represented externally by the industry also made their voices known. I know that for a fact because I saw it firsthand. In fact, I was one of those people making up noise in my newsroom. We decided to try and wrestle some form of say and control about how and what stories we told and broadcasted. We had to bat up our bosses, as we say where I'm from. We batted them up. Stepped to our boss, said, yo, this isn't good enough. This isn't cool. They were failing us, the industry, black people, and most importantly, their viewers, readers, and listeners. But ultimately, it was people leaving the industry to set up their own channels, their own podcasts, their own media platforms that forced the mainstream media to look at itself and ask some very harsh questions. Nowhere hemorrhages talent more so than media. Seeing people walk away, set up their own news space to broadcast their programming of choice, not only empowered those individuals of whom I'm speaking about now and they made more money than they ever did, but it also spooked the mainstream. So now you get to see the mainstream desperate to bring that same talent they didn't recognize, disregarded, failed to develop and promote, falling over itself to offer primetime slots and shows to those same people, just because it didn't realize the talents and potential under its nose. Think about whether architecture and the construction industry is making a similar error. So as I mentioned, it's Black History Month. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan. Not a fan and never have been. Firstly, because the UK happily puts my culture front and center for 31 days, and then on November the 1st, wants to pull a muscle in giving itself a pat on the back. Nah, no more of that. That level of convenience doesn't fly with me. Secondly, I don't really know what Black history is. And maybe some of my black counterparts here later can tell me what Black history actually is. For me, history is history, right? And it intersects with everything that it involves. But it's part of a very sophisticated plan, in my opinion, that starts in schools to brainwash kids, teach them that black people were slaves and or beasts who needed containing and segregating, and then you instill a mentality and a perception amongst a group of people about how they think about another group of people. But that's a whole different discussion. And the final reason I don't have time for Black History Month is because it always focuses on struggle and the need to regurgitate pain that was inflicted upon us. And then you might get, for balance, a shout out about a man that invented the ironing board, for balance, by the way, a black man. So why did I agree to come here today? All right, I'm bloody nosy, first of all, very, very nosy. And when I heard about a lack of opportunities for my people and people from my background, especially in a field that I know nothing about, I felt the need to express how my area of work are addressing the same problem and hopefully can be helpful to you guys as well. I can empathize with my brothers and sisters in as far as I know what it's like to be the only black and dark-skinned person in the room of white people. I have dreadlocks, so I know what it's like to be in a room and have the energy of, he looks a bit different, so he probably can't do the job very, very well. I know what it's like to not speak the boardroom language. I'm very good at it now, I'm fluent, but back then I wasn't, and it makes you feel a certain way. I know what it's like to not be able to share the same after university extracurricular activity chat in the staff kitchen. That's not your fault, but these are the experiences for many people like me in industries like yours. So that brings me to everyone in this room here and on the live stream. Let me now throw down a challenge to you guys here, whilst making you accountable to yourselves and each other. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because I don't care what gender, color, culture, age, or educational background you're from, everyone has power and agency. Some just have more than others. What are you going to do to ensure your industry is one that black boys and girls look to and see as a viable and realistic job they can enter? What are you going to do to ensure that your black colleagues feel the working environment they're currently in is one they can thrive in? What are you going to do to ensure that your black colleagues have a fair route to the top and have the chance to run and own the best construction firms in the world? If you love your profession, like I love my profession, I'm sure you do, you want what's best for it. If you want what's best for it, you want the best and the most creative and competent minds contributing to your industry. How can they do that? How can that happen if large groups of people are being locked out, and even when they're in the industry, they're only allowed to work at 60% of their capacity? So, my challenge to BDP, yep, you're getting some as well. Don't just make this a one-off event because it's Black History Month here today or in a couple of days. I'm going to be judging all of you guys on what you do to further the discussion on representation and equity. Now, those on the stream can't see this, but I'm wearing Clarks, so I'm a real Rastaman, yeah? So Rastaman say that everybody is equal, man or woman, no one is above anybody else. And I apply that to gender and culture as well. And the key for me is this, and I'll wrap it up here. No one is flawless, no one is perfect, and mistakes will be made. I told you before that I'm great, because I am great, but I'm not perfect. Even I make mistakes and I make errors. I'm far from perfect. But what's more important than being right is being fair. Look around this room and look around your office and ask yourself, are there enough black people entering this space and flourishing? Because recruiting and retaining talent is just part of the problem. Is the culture of your industry one that lends itself to being accessible for all types of people? Or are there a few too many Tarquins and Penelopes? Thank you. All right, so enough from me beating on. I'm going to open up the floor now to my four fantastic guests here on the panel. I'm going to have a discussion regarding the industry, your journeys, and what I'm very conscious to do is my first question to all of you guys is to not make this about struggle, pain, and difficulties. That may well come up. So let me start off by asking all of you guys. I'll start with you, TJ. What is the most enjoyable, the most amazing, and the most self-fulfilling thing about working in this particular industry and space?
I think just my job in itself. So my role is social impact and inclusion. I think of all the different roles that exist in the industry, it's one where I get to see firsthand the difference that we are making. Also because I enjoy the challenge of introducing something that's so different to the industry into the industry. There's something about that I enjoy. It's measurable. I get to see where we were and where we've got to, because it's so new, because it's so unusual. And just the general nature of the role in itself means that I get to actually see the fruit of the labor.
Before we go back to that question, guys, let me just actually give you 30 seconds to just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do and where you are. Sorry, I should have started there. You kick off, TJ.
So I've answered, but I'll go backwards. So I'm TJ. My role is Social Impact and Inclusion Lead at HB Reavers UK. I joined 3 months ago. Before that, I was at ISG. Before that, I was at Skanska. So lots of experience in our wonderful industry.
Nice. Eric?
So my name is Eric Niamachia and I'm a Senior Construction Manager, currently working for Mace. I have a civil engineering background and I also am a co-chair of our Ethnic and Diversity Network, Eden.
I'm Diane Small. I'm the Director of the RIBA London region. So I'm responsible for all of the architects in London, you guys, and just to make sure you're equipped professionally so that you can deliver great architecture.
My name is Nadia Pinto. I'm currently training to qualify as an architect and I work in BDP Manchester. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and thank you for the introduction.
No problem at all. I'll stick with you. I'm on the same question. What for you is the most enjoyable and fulfilling thing about doing the job that you do?
I think there are quite lots of fulfilling things in terms of architecture. For me, lately has been the openness for equality and equity within the project. So nowadays we designing thinking about inclusion, thinking about sustainability, and projects are willing to actually tackle the social issues. They're trying to create spaces of just welcoming everybody. There's no more restriction to what sort of people should use a space. Everybody should be welcome in a space. And I think this is something that inspired me in terms of architecture, to see this switch in mentality. And even as designers, the way we're approaching things is actually completely different. Is in a way to have always people in mind and prioritizing people's needs. And people means everything. People means diversity. People means different backgrounds. It means everything. So I think this is something within the construction industry, in particular in architecture, that is very inspiring to see this change.
Diane, to you, what drives and motivates you about the job that you do?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I'm an architect by profession. So just creating spaces for people, by people, that's one of my first drives. But on a day-to-day, the reason why I get out of bed and do what I do for the RIBA is because I have the opportunity to support architects to create great architecture. Me personally, as a Black architect, having gone through the career journey, having sat in every seat in an office to a director, I've been there, so I understand the struggles. I also understand the sacrifices that architects have to make. I understand the dedication to the profession, and I also understand that when you reach the pinnacle of your profession, or wherever you are on your career journey, you still need support. So as a director of London Region, I'm there to support you for that. But kind of my secret superpower is that now within the organisation, because I always felt that the RIBA wasn't a place that belonged to someone like me, and it was actually that comment that they offered me the role. So for me, it's about having somebody within the organisation who is the voice for the underrepresented, and not just for Black architects. It's for those who have disability challenges, gender issues, gender, all the protected characteristics. I'm there to kind of open the door and to make opportunities for everybody.
Love that. Eric, what do you enjoy most about the job that you do?
So in terms of what I enjoy, I think it's the fact that I've been able to work on some of the most prestigious jobs across the London skyline. I've worked on Heathrow Airport, I've worked on Battersea Power Station, the BBC in White City, and the fact that I can drive past some of these prestigious jobs, with my friends and family and say, yeah, I worked on that, is quite fulfilling for me. In terms of a daily basis, what I enjoy, I like the coordination aspect of it, the management of trades on site, the planning, seeing some of the designs come to life, the fast-paced nature of what we do, and that's what keeps my blood going and rushing.
Nice. And a question to whoever wants to answer first. I mentioned that in my speech earlier on that my industry has a lot of issues. I find that my industry can be quite reactive in terms of, an issue comes up, let's say racism and lack of diversity, and they kind of just do a lot of front of house work, but not doing a lot of back house work, which is about culture, rather than just recruiting a few new Black presenters. I'm sure there's a lot of crossover in all industries regarding race and those sorts of issues, but what do you think are some of the more unique issues to your industry that you as 4 Black people in this space have encountered and see that you think is very unique to this particular industry?
So I think the industry has diversity in it, and I'll describe it in this way, yeah? Battersea Power Station, for example, as you approach that project, if you go and visit it, you're greeted by traffic marshals, first and foremost, who'll tell you where the gates are. And they're predominantly people from a Black or ethnic minority background, yeah? And then you get to security, and there's people from a similar demographic, Black and ethnic minorities, yeah? And then as you get to you go up the building to the 2nd floor where the trades are, you see managers, supervisors, some of the tradesmen, and you get more of a mixed, diverse kind of group of people. Then you get to the floor above that, and then you see where the directors sit and some of the leaders of the business, and you start seeing that pendulum sway towards more white male. Yeah, so there's diversity in there, but I think at the top of the tree, it's predominantly white male. So it's how you kind of like can readjust that balance and lack of diversity at the top of the businesses. I think that's where we need to focus our attention.
Any other unique challenges that you guys, you ladies, you see and experience in this particular space that's maybe different to the cooking industry, the aviation industry? Is anything unique to this particular space that has made it difficult and harder for you guys?
I think for me, talking from an architectural perspective, it's the access to the profession. We don't, in our natural environment, we don't see that. And also the path to qualify. Can be tricky for everybody, not necessarily for black people. I mean, 7 years minimum to study to become an architect is a long period of time. And that's 7 years with very little financial resources. So I think that's one of the main challenges for architecture. And the thing is, when you do qualify as an architect, you're still studying at the bottom, so your salary doesn't equate to that 7 years of training.
I think for me, it's like adding to what Diane said, it's definitely about 2 points. There's the lack of representation leadership, and also it comes to how you access the profession, because obviously it's a long career, it's a long course. And when it comes to social mobility, there's kind of a difference between demographics. Like most of my counterparts, black people, my colleagues, sometimes they drop quite early because they cannot afford the fees, or they would rather just work because they have different priorities. And I think like in terms of architecture, that's where the challenge is.
What are the differences, TJ, that you see, if there are any at all, for black professionals here and how they're treated and how they're developed, if at all, to maybe how they are abroad?
So I guess my experience would be here. I probably will always describe myself as new to the industry. So I've been in the industry for 5 to 6 years. I want to cling to that new for as long as I can. I think I've always just found the industry really fascinating. So I came from a background of community development. So I worked in schools with young people at risk of exclusion. I worked in prisons. I managed children's homes, and I say I fell into the industry, but really I still am a bit of a social activist. So I went along to a HS2 careers fair and demanded they gave me a job, to which they did. They had to. Because I lived in the area impacted. So it made sense to me that they hired the community to talk to the community. But I think the thing that I always find really interesting, and speaking in a room full of architects, I feel like just joining the industry, I've always been fascinated, never feeling like I had access to it. Like I saw the shiny buildings and I just assumed that everyone was just way more intelligent than me, and forget that I had a degree or a master's or starting to do my PhD. Everyone here has done all these really big, shiny, important things. So everyone here is definitely better than me, and there's no way that I could ever sit in a room or be in conversation with these people. But then the thing that really interests me in an industry so technical, with so much requirement for planning and design, is how little they apply that practice to everything else in the industry. And we say with diversity is so much easier than inclusion. Like, honestly, I could make this room real black real quick. I've got a few friends that don't live far, fill it up, get some food, diversity, 100% achieved. Whether it's actually inclusive is really, really difficult. And just all of the principles, sometimes I sit as an outsider listening to these conversations, and I think, why would you not just apply those same planning principles to just everything else that you do? There's the level of diligence and thought that goes into everything else, into all of the other aspects and other areas of the industry. And it would be so much more inclusive. And I think I'm just forever fascinated by the industry and the way in which it works. And I think that's what's quite difficult. I think it's the fact that, as you said, diversity is the tick box, inclusion is the bit that everyone runs away from. But diversity is a byproduct of an inclusive environment. If you had an inclusive environment, it would be a diverse environment.
Of course. Does anybody else have any views on whether it's different here in the UK to abroad, or is it a global, it's problematic everywhere?
No, I've kind of lived that life. After I qualified, well, actually before I qualified, I moved from Birmingham to London, spent 8 months in an architectural practice in London. I can't remember which one it was. And I was just like, hell no, this place is going to destroy my soul. So I packed my bags and I went to Barbados, which was supposed to be for a year. I was there for 20 years. And for me,
It's not even a small difference.
but for me, it really boils down to the workplace culture. So when I was in Birmingham doing my part 2, I was in an architectural practice, a very small practice. I was the only black person there, but I wasn't just the only black person there. It was, my culture was brought and discussed and a part of the work experience. So I remember when I was standing, I had like braids and plaits, and I'd walk down the office and someone was like, Diane, this is yours, one of my plaits have dropped out. It wasn't an embarrassment thing, it was just educating. And I remember one year we were planning the Christmas party, and it was just like, well, it's your turn to plan this year. Where do you want to go? And I'm just like, you serious? Where do I want to go? Where I want to go, do you really want to go? So it was like, yeah, it's up to you. So we went to the Caribbean restaurant, and that was one of the best Christmas events we had. So it wasn't, and this was showing my age way before, I don't think diversity was even in the conversation. This was just, we all work here. But when I came down to London, it was a stark difference. It was that feeling of, I am the only one in here and no one is seeing me as different. I had to try and fit in. And in order for me to fit in meant that I would have to lose part of me. And I just felt I was too early in my career to lose the thing that's really important to me. So I just packed my bags and went to Barbados. But in the Caribbean, it's totally different. My experience there was like, it was the first time I had ever been called English. So there's me leaving England to go to the Caribbean to be amongst my people. And it's like, oh, the English girl over there. And I'm just like, so it's wherever you go, it's about culture and it's about inclusion, wherever you are, wherever you go in the world.
I just say I love the fact that you kept saying to everyone that, showing my age, because you know black people don't age. No, I don't know how old you are. I'm sitting there thinking 20. Like...
A question, I've got a few questions that were sent in before we started. I'll read a few of them out now. What experiences can you share with regarding providing equity for all staff in your company? Who wants to have a go at that one? What can people do to ensure that everybody has equity within the company?
Understand what it is, first of all, because I think I get different reactions from people when I mention equity, and some people think the idea of it's unfair. It means giving loads to one group, and which means it's not fair. And I think there's just a real piece of education that needs to be done around people really understanding what it means and what it looks like in those different areas. Does it mean for the person that has to do a school drop-off that you don't start meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 in the morning? Does it mean, access to building? Whatever it means, it's making sure people understand what that means, what it looks like in practice. So that would be my first comment on equity.
Just simplifying that, it's just getting to know who you work with, what their kind of daily life is, what their patterns and routines are. And then you'll know where you might be able to intervene to support them.
But you can know that and still not know what equity means, so you can't do one without the other.
Another one here is, have you ever been a recipient of good mentoring or worked with a positive role model in your career?
I think that's a very good question, because I believe in the power of mentorship. Mentorship is so important. I think everybody in their career path, somehow they have mentors. It can be intentionally, unintentionally. It can be somebody in your family. It can be a friend. Everybody can be a mentor, and everybody can have a mentor. So I feel like it's, especially when you're on the first stages of your career, like having people in different positions, in different stages of life, mentoring and helping you to walk the path is very important. And it has been beneficial to me. Some work from my own experience, like now that I'm training to qualify as an architect, if I didn't have a mentor that would actually follow every step, it would be way more challenging than just doing things on my own. And one of the things I've learned about mentorship is not looking for somebody who looks exactly like you, Obviously, representation is important, but in terms of mentorship, having diverse mindset and backgrounds and demographics, everything, it kind of brings value in your own personal life to have different people mentoring you. So yeah, I think when it comes to mentorship and diversity, it's important to look outside of our background and see what other people have to offer.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, like, we speak a lot about recruitment and retention, and I think this is where mentoring comes into play and where it's a lot more important, especially like in the early stages of your career, when you're coming into this massive working environment after university, for example. I think mentoring then is perhaps a bit more key, making you feel like you're more welcome into the team, someone you can speak to, and kind of guide you through, because it is quite a daunting experience, especially speaking as a young black man coming into the industry. I remember it being very, very daunting. And I had a mentor who, a guy called Rob, and he was brilliant, in terms of like really getting to understand about me and my culture, my background, and he made a concerted effort to really kind of dive into me, to understand me and how he communicated with me. Because I used to speak completely different to the guys I worked with. Growing up in South London, I had a bit of a twang. And you can imagine, coming into that environment where I was surrounded by like builders who were quite cockney at the time, and I really struggled, but he got it and he coached me through, and I think it's really important. So I've tried to create that kind of environment in my company where we buddy up new starters, especially those who are coming from minority ethnic backgrounds, so that they can settle in and start their journey into construction.
Sorry, I just want to make a plug here as we're talking about mentoring. So the RBA student mentoring program is now open. So I want to see a surge in registration. It's an opportunity for you to mentor Part 1 Year 3 students who some of them have not even stepped foot in an architectural practice. It's just 3 interactions. So yeah, we really appreciate all of you signing up to be mentors for 2022-23.
Just to add to that as well, I think it's really important to note that mentoring doesn't have to be done by people who are famous or have a profile or bosses. I think every single person can, and I'll even go further and say I think should be mentoring a young person, whatever field you're in. It can be as much as an hour a month. I don't care how busy you are, everybody can mentor, give up 1 hour a month to a young person or a new entry into their industry to just to listen, maybe not even to give them advice, but just to listen to what they want to do, what their journeys are, and what their challenges are. So that's my challenge to everybody in the room and on the stream. I'll come to questions in the room in a second, but just one more question from me. Are there any, or how big are the differences in the intersectionalities of being in this industry? So being black and a woman, or being black and gay, or being black and disabled, is that a whole nother layer of challenges that comes with working in this particular space as well?
Yes.
Expand.
It's just yes. Just yes.
So tell me what you've seen, what you've experienced that tells you that that's a whole another layer of problems of being in this industry.
I just think by design, the industry is not equipped for 1, and when you add 2 and 3, it just becomes more complicated for the individual and for the industry, because it's not prepared to receive, respond, engage in that way.
Yeah. So.
I was going to say, so when I've only been doing the kind of Eden piece, so working as a co-chair for a couple of years, and it's really opened my eyes about the kind of struggles that people that have come from these marginalised groups as well, like for females, for example, people who are non-straight, and because I didn't really appreciate they have similar struggles, and I thought to myself, well, I can't be here trying to represent like people from ethnic minority backgrounds and try and push for inclusion and diversity, and not really have an appreciation for what the struggles they're going through as well. And there's definitely commonalities there, but there is differences as well. When I walk into a room, you see a black man straight away. You don't know my sexuality, whether I've got children at home and stuff like that. So there are differences, but there's a lot of intersectionality as well.
When you think back to your younger self, just starting out in university, your career, what's the one thing that you wish you knew most?
So for those that might not have heard on the stream, going back to your younger self, what is the one thing, sorry, repeat that, sorry, one thing.
What's the one thing you
the one thing that you would tell yourselves?
Can I answer this
Yes,
one?
you go.
I think I'm still telling myself not to be afraid to enter in rooms that you're the only one. Because even if you're the only one, even if it's new to you, you might be leading the way for somebody else who looks like you. So I just like not to be afraid and just be brave to enter rooms. And even if the room doesn't look like you, maybe you're going to be the one shaping that room and changing. Yeah.
For me, it would be your difference is what makes you different. And that's what everybody needs. Don't be selfish with it because you're great.
Perhaps just not to be so paranoid, you know, like, and suffer from what I describe of double consciousness. You know, I used to always worry about people worrying about me. And I know I'm not a threat. And I think I even still do that some days now. Like, for example, if I'm coming home after a night out drinking and it's late and I see someone walking down the road, I would cross the road so that they feel comfortable that I'm not a threat, but I know I'm not a threat. Or if I'm in a restaurant, for example, and the room's tight with tables and stuff, if there's a woman sat there with a bag there, I would always say to the person I'm with, you sit there. Like, I hate that feeling of them clutching at their bag because I'm sitting next to them. So that kind of paranoia and thinking that people are threatened by you, that's kind of, yeah, it stops your growth and your confidence. So just tell myself that, really.
I remember I went to see Michelle Obama speak at the South Bank Centre, and I remember her saying that she's been in lots of really, really important rooms with lots of really stupid people. And I thought, what does she mean? And then I think just one of the things, as I said earlier, I stereotype people as well. I had an assumption that everyone that looked a certain way had a certain level of intellect and was better than me, and I'd have nothing to contribute to their conversation or to that room, which is so entirely untrue. And I can confidently sit in any of those meetings and have things to say on matters that I have no experience on, just through sheer common sense and intelligence, and just really appreciating that I have something to add to the conversation. And that there are lots of really, really intelligent people. I work with loads of really, really intelligent people, but just this assumption that you'll have nothing to add to that you should, you're not going to be as good as in that space. And I think just to be confident and know that you have something to add, you have something to give.
2 more questions from the audience. Lady, go on,
Okay.
I'll ask you a question.
All right. Is how to deal with imposter syndrome. So I'm qualifying to be an architect, and every day I wake up and I think I'm a fake architect. How do you deal with getting over that fear of like feeling like an imposter, even after qualifying to be an architect or training to be an architect?
You don't. You just get on with it. you just get on with it. I mean, everybody feels like an imposter.
I'd say there's a well-being element in there as well, right? Because I think there's also a part where I don't want you to just get on with feeling like you're less than or not as good as. And I would say that definitely have those conversations and have those conversations, particularly when dealing with leadership or other rooms where I question, am I good enough to have this conversation? Are they going to listen to me? But then I'd say, like, what does a real architect look like? I'm really lucky that my role is very person-centered. So I spend a lot of time looking at the person and their impact and their experience. And I've been doing that also just with my colleagues and with this room, and not sitting up here and thinking, oh my God, everyone here is more, and just, there are going to be people here who are parents, there might be here in disabilities, someone here may have had a bad day, someone here might have a bad marriage. Like, everyone is going through stuff, everyone is an individual, and whatever it is you think that makes you, a fake architect, like, pick that apart. Like, what are those individual things? And what makes a real architect? What makes that person a real one? Is it their qualification? Do you have the same one? We have the same one. Is it the way they dress, the way they present? I think when you start to really look at these things, it really challenges some of your own programming and your own self-perception and self-awareness and the way you feel about yourself. I think sometimes don't just get on with it. Sometimes for your own well-being, sometimes challenge that within yourself. I love therapy. I boast about it wherever I go. I get therapy whenever something new. I got therapy when I left the job. I got therapy when I started the job. I'm gonna get therapy when I pass probation. Like, it's one of my favorite things. And I think for a long time, people get really afraid about talking about therapy because it must mean there's something wrong. And I'm so boastful about the fact that I have therapy because it's my way of letting you know that everything is all right. I'm really worried about all of those who aren't in therapy. Like, I'm in therapy, still people that don't go to therapy. So I'd say just take all of those things that you can do for your own well-being, whether it's therapy, whether it's a mentor, whether it's whatever it is, and just some self-reflection, some of those exercises. There are great programs. I'm not sure which ones there are that exist within your space, but there are things I deliberately sign up to, things that give me a chance to self-reflect, to meet other people, to examine my space. But do those things to take care of yourself, and just work out what a fake architect is and why you've categorized yourself as one.
Thank you. Time for one more question.
I think we probably all recognise that the construction industry is changing, but it's not changing fast enough. So what shortcuts? Are there shortcuts to speed up change?
I think the shortcut starts right in front of you in your practice. It's about focusing, I think it's the leadership team, focusing on the workplace culture, making sure the workplace culture is inclusive for everybody so that you attract and retain talent, and that all of you get the knowledge that you need to then go out into communities, so you have the cultural intelligence to engage with everybody that you can then kind of bring back into the industry.
I think you create that kind of speed for change by keeping the momentum going. Just keep having the conversations, creating that safe space for people to feel confident and speak about these issues. It can't just be a moment. I know it's Black History Month now, we're speaking about it, which is great, but we need to continue this conversation. You know, it needs to be an ongoing thing. It needs to be a way of life until we're not speaking about it anymore. That's the problem we've got. But we are definitely moving towards a cultural shift of acceptance generally, I think, where people are accepting people from different backgrounds and sexualities and religious beliefs and all the rest of it, you know, like generally across the board. So things are definitely moving in the right direction by just keeping that momentum going. Right from the top all the way down, from leadership. We need their buy-in, of course, because they're the influencers. That's why they're leaders, obviously. And then right through the businesses.
I think also, just to add on the question, just work with communities, see what the necessities of communities, and within the workplace, like how we can help these communities. Do we have apprenticeship course? Do we have ways to actually lead young people from certain place to actually to the workplace environment? I think there are lots of different shortcuts that we can apply.
I was just going to say really quickly, sorry, are you an architect?
I was going to say, I think BDP is diverse. We have engineers.
Yeah.
As well as
Are you an engineer? Do you take shortcuts with your engineering? Do you take? It's a good point, because no one knows what the right answer is, right? So I'd say don't take shortcuts. I'd say shortcuts are probably what's got us in the wrong situation. I think I'm going to speak confidently about a topic of which I have no knowledge in terms of architecture, but if it's designed incorrectly, it's just designed incorrectly, and then you should just design it properly. Like, for us to be really inclusive, from recruitment, due to workspace, due to whatever it is, it has to be designed in a way that makes everyone feel like they belong and they are included, that it's accessible, that it's comfortable. And if it just isn't, there is no shortcut that's going to fix that. Like I said, I can make the room real black real quick. That's not going to change anything that might be underneath it that could be problematic. The foundation's wrong, it's just wrong, right?
Just before I introduce a couple of guests that we've got here today, my final question would be, Black History Month starts this weekend. I don't know how you guys feel about this particular month, but for BDP, what's a win? So come November the 1st, what can they take away for this 31 days coming up that will signal progression, that will signal that things are being done to try and fix the problem and fix the issue of the lack of inclusion in this industry? You're talking to them now. I'm talking to anyone if you've got it. What does a win look like this month?
I think a win for me would be if everyone woke up and thought, what am I going to do to make BDP inclusive? Every day. about everybody.
Yeah, just I was gonna say, like, just having that bit of empathy, you know, just thinking of what it's like just being in someone else's shoes, you know, and just being more considerate. I mean, being more culturally aware, perhaps. Just kind of extra mile to find out about your counterpart, you know, ask questions, and don't worry about making mistakes about language and stuff like that. It's okay, you know, we're all still learning on this journey. You know, I think much rather you ask a question. Before we started today, you asked me how you pronounce my surname, you know, rather than pronouncing it wrong. I think simple things like that always help.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any advice, any words towards BDP?
Good stuff been said already.
Yeah, they did. They said everything.
Perfect. Before I close the discussion, guys, I've got a couple of guests here today I want to bring to the floor to talk a little bit about the work they're doing. Can Beverly DeGale and her husband, Oren Lewis, who are from the Afro-Caribbean and Leukemia Trust, come forward, please. Go there so that our cameras can see you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. First of all, just honored to be here to represent the African Caribbean Leukemia Trust, the ACLT. We want to work with BDP, whether it be Black, white, Asian, Oriental, mixed race, young, old. We want to work with you to try and save lives. And we want to come back in the very near future to do something spectacular where you as an individual can make a difference. I am great. We are great because what we do is save lives. We save lives by empowering people like yourselves to go beyond your comfort zone and say, I can be of service to someone. I can be the potential lottery winner for someone. How do I do it? And what we do, we give people the opportunity to join the bone marrow, or also known as the stem cell register, by just registering and giving something that looks like long Q-tips, a cheek swab, so that the information on this can be processed, not handed to any other third party, especially the police, which a lot of people seem to think happens, and it doesn't. We pass the information on to the authorities to actually see whether you can be a donor for someone in this country or abroad who is racially, ethnically similar to you, because it works on racial lines. We also promote blood donation, because there's an urgent need for blood donors, especially in the Black community, for those sickle cell patients. And we want people to do like what I do. I've done this 52 times. I've given blood because I know how important it is to carry a donor card like this to save lives. Because my blood can match someone of any race, but specifically those from my community, from the sickle cell community that need a donor. And I also carry an organ donor card because there's an urgent need, again, from kidneys and livers for people of my background who urgently need that match. So we want to come back in a very near future and work with you. Whether it be straight, gay, young, old, it doesn't matter. But it's inclusive, but it's targeted. It's heavily targeted. And I want to do what we did this morning, just down in the city. We went to a corporate organization, they welcomed us in, and we had a selective audience online and in where we were. And literally everyone in the room afterwards said, where do I sign up? Took the cheek swab, signed up, made a difference. And they walked away on cloud 9 realizing what I do in my life, in my job is powerful. But what I've just done is giving someone hope to be the ultimate insurance policy. So when myself, Beverly, and our team come back very soon, we want to work with you, empower you, utilizing what you do here, working through the media to get the message out, how someone like you can step forward and go, if you need me, find me. I'm always going to be here just in case you need me. And for me, and for us, that is ultimate in Black power, empowerment. So on behalf of the ACLT and everyone that we work with, all the patients, and especially our son, Daniel DeGale, who was a catalyst for us doing our work for the last 26 years and saving hundreds of lives and registering hundreds of thousands of people on the stem cell register and thousands more as blood and organ donors. I just want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity, and we look forward to working with you very soon to do something amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oren. There will be a series of activities and events happening here at BDP throughout Black History Month, including a number of quizzes. So, check the comms for that, because there'll be a lot of things happening throughout the month. Can I get some love from my panel, please? Can I get some love, please, for Nadia, Eric, Diane, and TJ, please? As mentioned, the work starts now. We can discuss and we can chat and we can talk all day long. But the challenge I think we're all collectively putting to you guys is, what are you doing? Ask yourself those questions, ask your colleagues those questions, and we want action. If you want your industry to be better, as I mentioned, you want the best minds, you want the best creative, most competent people to be working in your space. Bring those in. Ask yourself why everyone in my room doesn't or looks like me, because invariably there will be mainly white people in those rooms. I'm making a guess here, but I think I'm correct. So why is that? Because there are lots of black boys and girls that want to be in these spaces as well. Why aren't they here? They're not less intelligent than you guys. There must be a reason. So ask those really hard questions and then do the work to ensure that you are mentoring, you're working, you're bringing through people that want to be the next you, because everyone deserves a chance to be in this particular space as well. There's going to be some music, some dancing, I'm told as well. Yeah, I'm looking at you here, Alan, a bit later on. There'll be some food at the party here today. So please hang around, network, speak to our fantastic panel. Otherwise, please get home safe. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you very much.
It's important because otherwise it's just an event, and there are many, many, many events, but this is a conversation that needs to continue, and we need to turn it into action. And action can't happen in limited periods of time. It's got to be continuous improvement. Otherwise we can't achieve what we want to do. I think the key is to identify spaces where people can excel and push people into them. We know the people we have. We employ them because they're great, creative people. And we just need to create places, push them into space and allow them to perform and support them. Yeah, it's a really difficult question. I think it's about talking to people, and it's about having conversations and not being scared to appear to be a stupid white male, which I am, and ask questions. Do you feel okay? Do you want to do this? This is, create that opportunity for inclusivity by actually actively being involved and asking and pushing.
It's very important that we are authentic, we're not tokenistic. It's really important that we support everybody, not just for 1 month of the year, for 12 months of the year, for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever we need to do. So this is the starting point. I always think Black History Month is great in terms of refreshing the conversation. As a leader, what I'm keen is to make sure we turn it into action. To me, it's about changing policies. It's looking at our recruitment and outreach activities. It's about the leadership also becoming accountable. So what's great actually in our new strategy as a practice, we've started to develop KPIs that we're going to get measured on. So hopefully we can demonstrate we are driving change, because as a leadership group we are becoming accountable, because that's really important. Again, I don't think we have a perfect solution, but we have a number of solutions. So we have a group called BDP Belonging, which is a network. We have representatives from all our studios. Those representatives champion certain protected characteristics, and they bring really good issues to the table. And we have a forum. I sit there as part of the leadership team. Our chief exec comes along to them as well. So we have a group of people engaged that can bring issues to the table. And I think that's really important to make sure that we empower that to happen. As part of one of our actions coming out of Black History Month that we want to move forward for the next 12 months, we are looking at a particular mentoring scheme for Black and minority ethnic. We've got a great group of people with lived experiences, and they're helping shape that. We're not quite sure what it is yet, but we are going to start rolling it out November, December, January time. But working, I guess, with our race and race groups to make sure that we have their input into how we shape that as a practice. So, yes, mentoring is really, really important, but we've got to get it right, and we've got to get the right relationship between a mentor and a mentee.
Diversity is one issue that we do address. Inclusivity, inclusive design, those are the areas where we can get agency from everyone, feel like they're part of the process. And being in the design world, you want to really make sure that people feel included and that their voice is heard. Everyone needs to find their voice, because the more voices that you have, the more informed you are with anything that we do. That knowledge, sharing the knowledge and the experiences, they can all be fed into design. That's my opinion. Doesn't matter if you're architect, engineer, any of the disciplines that we have, sustainability, you know, even all the specialisms we have within BDP. I'd like everybody to come with their voices and participate, contribute, and feel that level of value. So we need to create the mechanism for that within our design forums, young and old. It's good to have young people talk about what they see, how they see the world. I think that's really important.
For me, equality, diversity and inclusion at BDP means more opportunities, more representation, and definitely the willingness to do things, to change things, and to work for a better work environment. And obviously, when it comes to equality, diversity, and inclusion within BDP, it has been a progress, it has been a process, there's still lots to learn. And within BDP Belonging, we work to make these changes, to address these topics and to make the work environment more diverse. And I wouldn't say there's a right or wrong answer, but what I say is just about improving, learning, and creating more opportunities for everybody. One of the things that BDP can do is definitely just have more representation, to be honest. And another thing is to continue having the mentorship programs and having formal and informal mentorship. So, as we discussed in the panel event, mentorship, everybody can be a mentor. So there's not such a thing as right or wrong. There's just people willing to actually contribute and just leave a positive impact into people's lives.
It's friendly, comfortable, I'd say, and a kind of everybody's very welcoming, good to chat to, and I think on the whole, it's also we've got a lot of people from different parts of the world, geographically, so that's quite interesting. So it's a good mix. It's a good mix. Funny people is what I would say. Good people, good chats. Having gone through architectural training, I think the main thing is supporting people through their education. I think there's particularly in architecture, there's always an issue of how do you make sure that people who do come from minority ethnic backgrounds make it all the way through the education, because it's so long. So BDP specifically, I think it's to do with, again, supporting students through their education, either with apprenticeships or with sponsorship or whatever that may be. But then getting involved at an earlier stage, so really going into schools in areas where people might not think of architecture as a career, and actually just presenting what we do, because I think what we do is really interesting, but not a lot of people know about it. And that's just generally, not even just within kind of ethnic minority communities, that's across the board. So going into communities where people might not consider going into construction and talking about what we do and telling them why it's interesting. Black History Month is useful as a focal point. It's useful for starting the conversation. And I think if you imagine, where would the conversation be without Black History Month? I think it would probably be a lot further back. And actually, this is useful just to kind of sometimes focus minds. The challenge is then for these organizations to actually push that conversation forward beyond Black History Month and keep that conversation so that it's not, as you say, not a performative act. But at the same time, I think it's useful to spark conversation, because sometimes I might introduce somebody who knows nothing about the conversation, who knows nothing about equity and inclusion and diversity, and actually give them a foot in. So I think it plays a role in that sense.
I think it's important to have the conversation outside Black History Month, because just like if you're going to the gym, you just don't go for a month. It's a muscle that you need to build. People are uncomfortable talking about race, but if you continue to have that conversation, then those conversations will be easier. Okay, so there's a quote, I can't remember who it's by, but it says the culture of an organization is shaped by the worst behavior tolerated. So I think it's important for the leaders to kind of shape their culture by example. And if you're not 100% confident, it's about learning and developing, looking at who's around the table, what's being said, how it's being said, and just kind of bringing in those voices of those that are not there to create an inclusive workplace culture. Okay, so for me, I hugely and strongly believe in cultural intelligence, which is the capability to work effectively with people from different cultural backgrounds. So just as someone said in the presentation there, you can fill the room full of Black people, but it's still not inclusive. So it's not just about diversity, it's about inclusion. What do we need to do? First of all, look around in the room to see who's missing, and then find those and include those voices in the conversations. We don't come into work and just be the professional Diane and then go home and be the personal Diane. We are, it's that bringing your full self to work, but it's also about bringing the value to the conversation. You bring your full self and all of you to the conversation, then there's so much richness that's going to be in the conversation, which could lead to kind of a better project, a better design, and for a better community. So it's important that everyone feels valued, everyone feels like they belong, and that's when you get true inclusivity.
I'm not, if I'm being honest, I'm not a fan of it. I think it's something that's constructed to appease Black people for 31 days at a time when there wasn't any Black history at all. So there you go, there's 31 days, get on with it. I don't think it serves any real purpose other than to trying to appease people. And even then, the history and education of it is often negative and about struggle and slavery. It's not empowering and celebratory at all. So no, I'm not a fan of it at all. But I think if it's going to be here, we have to use it to say that and call it out. I think it's important that people feel they belong because you work harder. It's simple as that. I think if you're somewhere where you feel people understand you, people respect you, people want the best for you, I think it makes you feel more comfortable. If you feel more comfortable, I think you push out your chest a little bit more and you want to do more. I think if you feel happy and comfortable in your working environment, you're more productive. Think about it, reverse it. If you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel happy, and you go into a place of work, you'll do the bare minimum. You're gonna do the bare minimum. But if you go into a place every day at work and know that I'm going into an environment where everyone understands me and respects me, I want to do more for this company. I want to work harder, work longer, and therefore do better. So that's the reason for me why that personal fulfillment and feeling comfortable in your workplace is so important. Yes, and often it is. People, and I mentioned it as well, people tend to do a lot of what I call front of house diversity and inclusion. So it's lots of like bells and whistles, and we're doing this, and we recruited a Black this and a Black that. We've got a new Black manager, we've got a new this. But actually, the cynicism comes with, okay, but A, is that person going to be there in the long term? Because you've brought in a person to be your new manager, but if the culture and the environment isn't correct, how long will they last there? They won't last long. And secondly, the cynicism comes with people that actually, on one side, show that they're trying to be more inclusive, but their actions in their workplace and what they do in their output is something very different that shows, well, actually, you didn't understand the importance of inclusion, because if you did, you wouldn't have done that. So I think that there's a lot of performative action of people that say, D&I, we're doing it. And the pushback, I understand it. And the ones that actually truly get it, don't talk about it. They just do it. The ones that actually really get it, you never hear from them because they're just doing the work. And you're like, oh, okay. I looked at your Christmas staff photo last year and it was all white and mainly men. And now, okay, I'm seeing a few, oh, okay, all right, cool. And they get it.